All right, everyone. It's 2:30, and if you were here, you were about to hear about the session title working group. Oh, excuse me, the DIEM working group. I'm Rowan May.
And I'm Tommy Jensen.
We will be your chairs for this flight today. Please buckle your seatbelts, raise your tray tables. Today we do not have much formally on the agenda, but we do hope to get some good work done. But before we can do that, we need a scribe. Hopefully we can get one person taking notes and one person checking the Zulip chat. Do we have any volunteers, please?
We can outlast you.
While we're waiting for a scribe, I will remind everybody to please log in to the online tool for MeetEcho if you're in the room.
And if you missed it and don't know where to find it, there's a QR code right outside the door.
And on the mic stand.
Oh, and on the mic stand. Do that instead. Don't leave. We are still looking for note takers. We have to have one. Given this will be a working session on the active document, the chairs will be involved in guiding discussion. So once again, we need someone to volunteer to take notes. They do not have to be amazing. They just need to follow the discussion. We promise never to criticize you on the job.
Can you start walking around?
Do it. Also, remote folks are welcome to volunteer. That's true. Well done. You've done your part.
This is DKG. I've got the doc open.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yes, thank you to note takers.
And a much easier job. Could someone please volunteer to be to monitor the Zulip chat and to come to the microphone? Thank you, Allison.
Perfect. All right, we can get started. As the slide indicates, this is the NN of November because yours truly forgot to update the title slide. This session is being recorded. If that wasn't unexpected, we'll refer to this slide, which is the note well. Now, we're well aware that this is the final session of a week-long conference, but we're not zooming past this because it's important. We do expect that you have read the note well, and if not, please take a moment to read it now. There is an excellent organization called the OMSBUD team that you should refer to if there are interpersonal issues or violations of the anti-harassment procedures, which we are all bound to. No excuses. Same goes for intellectual property rights. If you are aware of something here that may run afoul of patents or intellectual property otherwise that your sponsor is aware of, you need to disclose that immediately or not participate. There's more information available on this slide if you want to look at other things. Can I advance from here, or are you controlling? I think looking at the numbers, we're good on this, but in case you don't have it open already, if you're on site, please open the on-site tool. Otherwise, please join using MeetEcho. Although if you're hearing this, well done, you did it. Please keep audio and video off unless you are actively coming to the queue to speak, just to keep everything running smoothly. If you come to the mic to make a comment, please state your name. This will help the note taker be able to follow along with the discussion. All right, so there's other resources, although at this point, checking the conference agenda probably won't do you much good. The next session is the farewell reception. Don't be late. The agenda is pretty loose. This is the end of the slides that we have prepared for this entire session because the agenda is to do a working session on, drumroll, our adopted working group draft. Well done to the co-authors who pulled through a lot of feedback to get it to that state. We are all very appreciative. So we are going to be working out of GitHub and doing a live share of the issues, the text, and we're going to work on this as a working group because it's the only document at our current deliverable, which is to get a document describing use cases and requirements for our working group scope to a last call ready state. We agreed that we didn't have to necessarily publish it as an RFC, but it needs to have the full working group rough consensus before we can proceed with our second deliverable, which will be an architecture document. Does anyone have any agenda bashing or things they would like to bring up? Noting that we'll reserve 10, 15 minutes at the end for any other business. Does anyone have any objection? Brilliant.
Okay.
If the co-authors don't mind, the chairs can continue running. We can go through this very long list of issues for you, calling people to the mic line. After that, it really is, I think, just, oh, look at that. Excellent. These are pull requests. Okay. I highly approve of people acting asynchronously in GitHub. It's never too late and we can refresh. That's fine. But we're just going to run this out. So co-authors, if you'd like to come respond to things, please do. But relax, you don't have to present today if you don't want to. What would you like to do? Issues or pull requests?
So we have a number of pull requests here. One thing that I would like to encourage everybody is if you do a pull request and it's not just typos, please create a corresponding issue. And it's okay if the issue just says, it just has the title and refers to the PR. But it's really good for us to be able to point at an issue and say, because we can triage the issue, we can assign it to someone, we can apply labels to it in a way that means that there might be multiple PRs that end up kind of, different approaches to solve the same issue. And that's important. So it's just a good piece of housekeeping. That said, we would much rather that you put some issue or some PR or anything at all than to put nothing. If you think that there's something that needs to be changed about the document. So with that, do you want to walk us through the first list of bottom up maybe on the PRs?
Certainly. So yeah, we'll go in chronological order. So the very first PR that we have open with a good healthy amount of discussion is adding charter definitions. Defining the terms digital emblem, etc. A discussion that we've had so far, let's see. The screen is not, okay, there we go. The screen is desperately trying to keep up. Okay, so looking at the active discussion that I'm definitely not going to read out loud, Felix, would you mind coming to the mic line and explaining your objections? And we'll kick this off.
Yeah, hi, I'm Felix. My objections to the pull request are similar. There were basic, on the high level, this pull request adds 3 sections to the terminology. I think bearer. Can you? One of them is digital emblem. Okay,
Can we
terminology
pull
and
up
digital
the
emblem, and it's copy and
edited
paste from the charter. And my objection is that this ought to define terminology, but I think the text in the charter doesn't define what a digital emblem is, so it's not a really helpful passage in the terminology. But I also don't want to change it because I think if we start trying to define digital emblem, it will take us years. We have tried it in the past and we failed, and I don't see any requirement to define the term. So just cut this out and only define bearer and validation as it said there, because that text is fine with me and it is a definition. Yeah, that is my reasoning.
Are folks on the who are remote seeing any slides? Rahel, can you see this? Can you see my web page?
I can see your web page.
Okay. Rahel, do you want to say anything?
So I can speak to the motivation behind adding these working definitions, which was namely that if the charter were to change, if we just say that we're using the working definitions that are in the charter, well, we might not be able to necessarily reference those. So the entire point of copying them in was specifically to allow for a more lasting reference to the working definitions that we have. I have nothing for or against what level of detail we need here. It was simply to make things clearer for the longer term.
Ori?
Hi, Ori Steele, your area director. Just a general note on charters. It's like pretty typical that they wouldn't have a lot of technical detail where you would always be coming back to them. So I think the working group, under the decisions of the chairs, but you shouldn't feel free. You should feel free to solve the problem with the terminology that you can come to consensus to here. And don't feel bound to the specific words we used in the charter if their spirit is better handled by terminology you have consensus with here. So that's it.
Okay, so if there's nobody else in the mic line here, but basically the spirit of this was that the opening sections of the draft referred to the charter, and the charter might change. So having some terminology in the document seemed like a good thing. It sounds like Felix doesn't object to bear or valid, to the sort of the working definitions of bear or validation. And so what we could do is we could remove emblem, we could stick it in a comment, and we could merge this, and then we would at least have two definitions. And that would also be a straw person for editing those definitions and saying we don't like those definitions.
Andrew.
Hi, Andrew Campling. For what it's worth, I think if you're going to have any definitions, not having a definition of the thing seems a bit weird, and that seems a pretty harmless definition. So I think if not to define it at all, but have definitions of other things would be a very odd approach in my view.
Yeah, hi, Felix Linker. So, I mean, this is not such a big issue. I don't want to spend time on it. If everyone is happy with this text, I don't mind it too much. I have the principled objection that I just don't think it's definition. And I think what we have written in the intro is sufficient. But since now I'm like, my objection basically was I feared that there is a big debate on what digital emblem is and what the best definition is. But it seems like that I'm keeping this discussion alive. And if this is and if only me keeps this discussion alive, we can keep the text, and I don't mind.
Well, then let's turn this on its head and ask the room, does anyone object to this definition as written? And if so, please.
Does anyone object to us merging this as an initial definition?
Fair, yes. We will continue to work on the document, but does anyone find this offensive?
Do you want to use a show of hands tool, or are you just doing an informal, nobody speaking?
Oh, just challenging people to come to the queue. So go ahead. Yeah, not a show of hands, just a, trying to flush out comments. Would you like to come share that? No. Okay, that's fine. From the chat, we have Pete mentioning that the definition seems to not do a full definition. But
So
go for
could I recommend sending text?
it. That is always the answer. For those online, that was a no.
So Felix, again, Rohan, you asked does anyone object to merging this as an initial definition? And I think I wouldn't object to merging it as a final definition, but I would object to merging it as an initial definition because I don't want to spend 10 more cycles refining and iterating it, because I don't think we need to. I don't think if we get this definition just right, we will write standards faster or come to consensus faster on any of the follow-up work. That's why if we agree to not change it, I don't mind. But if it's a starting point for further discussion, then I would be worried.
The thing is that basically everything we do here is always a starting point. So someone can always object later.
So for those of you, as quick note, for those of you who are less familiar with the IETF, because I know that this group has brought in a bunch of newcomers, which is awesome. Having just done a call for adoption that passed, this document is now owned by the working group and will stay here until such time we do a working group last call, which will be much like the call for adoption we just did, except the question will then be, are we done with it and ready to let the rest of the IETF tear it apart for more feedback? So short of that, this is an active ongoing work. So we don't have to do every one of these PRs with a full-blown consensus. We just want to check temperature and let the editors do their best to give us something to argue about. Is there anything else in PR1?
There is nothing else in PR1.
Okay. Sorry, Allison, I missed you in the queue.
To say that I like having the definition, and I think it works, and I think it can get refined when we have refined some use cases and we come down to some of the disagreements between the use cases. But I think it's a really good working definition that Rahel offered in the PR. A set of working definitions, including the emblem one.
Very good. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Let's go on to the next PR. All right. PR number 4, simpler phrasing of undetectable validation. Gosh, this feature's gone through a lot of names, hasn't it? Who wrote this? Felix. Would you like to come to the mic line and give us the TLDR?
Yes, sure. So the previously, okay, this is the phrasing that made it into this document of undetectable validation intended to address comments from Roman that prior phrasing assumed the internet threat model, making this unobtainable. So I thought, oh yeah, he has a point. We need to talk about who shouldn't be able to detect it. And so I thought, oh yes, let's say bearers, issuers, and authorizing parties, because these are the parties of the protocol that are creating things that can be validated. So they could act adversarial, but this wasn't accurate because before checking, you actually don't know whether you're talking to an actual bearer or to someone who pretends to maybe bearer. So now I say potential bearers referring to the discovery requirement to make it clear that, you're reaching out to someone, you want to check, you want to not alarm them. Yeah. So they may try to do that by also pretending to be an issuer or an authorizing party, but yeah, that's the reasoning.
Awesome, thank you. So the two material changes being that bearers are now potential bearers, and the set of people this requirement applies to is the bearers instead of all parties. So feel free to come to the queue, and we'll start with DKG.
Hey there. I totally agree with bearers and potential bearers. Switch. I'm not sure why we remove issuers or authorizing parties. Like, why? Surely the Red Cross doesn't deserve. The Red Cross is operating its own. Sorry, it's not the Red Cross who might be the authorizing party or the issuer necessarily, right? Maybe there's some other actor that's an issuer or an authorizer. Why should? It seems like we want to make sure it's undetectable for all of them. So why are we striking those two? Apologies if I'm not following.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. I think my point or my thinking was that it is about the thing that so I'm phrasing this requirement comes from the IHL use case where you want to stop services from being disrupted, right? So who would want to disrupt services? That would be parties that want to attack things that do not have that do not enjoy protection under IHL. So you don't want to alarm your target, right? So I used basically bearers as a stand-in for target, but reflecting on what you said, DKG, I agree that it may not be the best term because bearers is maybe too specific here. Yeah, that I'm not entirely sure what I make of your comment, but yeah, this was my reasoning.
Rowan May, as an individual, my concern with this language would be that if an issuer, say, was able to if they found out that someone was querying in a suspicious way, that they could easily then inform the bearer or the target of the query.
Andrew?
Yeah, hi, Andrew Camping. I mean, it occurs to me looking at this, I think the potential bearer aspect of this is a red herring. I think it just needs to say if the emblem discovery is detectable, malicious parties could misuse, which is kind of, I think, what we're all saying in subtly different ways. I think it doesn't matter who it's discoverable by. I thought one of the properties we wanted that the emblem discovery wasn't discoverable, period. Because otherwise, if it's discoverable by anyone, then any malicious party has got a target to attack, to find stuff out that we don't want them to find out.
So the problem is that we don't have a design yet. So a lot of this is now up in the air. Felix, by the way, again. I found the comments from I think in particular Roman convincing that if you limit undetectability to the world, you will never achieve it without basically distributing phone books to everyone. Yeah, and now we could decide that the world is such that this is the solution we must go for. What an idea that I had that could maybe go into your direction, but still allow us to avoid the internet threat model problem would be to explicitly say, the best case would be that the digital that validation and discovery is undetectable to everyone, right? Undetectable to everyone, detectable to no one. And then we can say that we must probably though make some threat model decisions, that some parties actually may be able to see some of it, but that this is okay, and this needs to be figured out in the design to address the internet threat model problem. That would be, maybe going into your direction, Andrew.
I'm going to point out that this says digital emblems discovery may require. So I think we've got enough wiggle room that this isn't going to, if we leave the existing language, it's not going to hang us later.
I think it might make sense if there's a concern about the difference between bearers and authorizers and issuers to say bearers may, and separately and distinctively issuers or authorizers might choose to have that requirement. And then you have a mix and match, because it's still a little hard to figure out what the use cases are, but you could imagine that you're an authorizer and you actually would like to be able to track them, and there's some technique for confidentiality or something like that that allows you to see it, but you don't want the issuer. I mean, there's a variety of possible use cases here. So, I mean, it's very much a may, so we don't understand this as a global use case anyway, but if I'd rather leave the two other parties in, but maybe just say that one or each or all of them is potential, is may have this requirement. Does that help you, Felix? Because if we take them out entirely, I think we're cutting off some of the directions someone may need to go in.
Hi, everyone. Samit Dukuna, International Committee of the Red Cross. I just, want to clarify that, certainly when it comes to the IHL emblems, the context that we've discussed this requirement with verifiers is indeed in the sense that if it's undetectable, it would be undetectable not just to the bearer, but to anyone, because, Rohan and, Andrew, I completely agree with what you said. I mean, if it's detectable to some and not others, then, that information, that qualification wouldn't be enough for a verifier, I think, to proactively, query for an emblem. If for them it's, potential for the IHL emblems, if there's a potential that the emblem might be sort of detectable even to any kind of entity. So agree with what you said.
And since sorry, Andrew Cumming speaking, since I put it in the chat, I think we should advocate for oblivious discovery as a thing. Privacy champion that I am.
Completely seriously, or as a Friday afternoon commentary?
Despite the comment, actually reasonably seriously, I think that
Okay.
would be as a concept without needing to define it. I think that's kind of what we want, given that we don't at this stage have a design or use cases. So if you're as an abstract direction of travel, I think that's about the right thing to do.
I love the optimism of this group. We're queuing up requirements for the architecture draft. Okay, so the queue is now empty, and yes. Okay, so we will not make a decision either way on this, but as a summary to the editors, what I was hearing is that there's a desire to retain all the previous parties, that the rename, including potential, makes sense, and Allison's point that maybe they could be separated, even though all still present, to allow a modular approach. All right. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. We're all friends here. No, this is great. Taking the seconds to do it now makes life so much easier later. Oh, there has to be a better UX for this. Is anyone from Microsoft in the room? I love saying that now.
Tommy, that company has gone down the toilet after somebody left recently.
Aww. For the record, the people I know who work at GitHub are amazing and actually have gotten a lot more IPv6 progress. So I'd like to give them some kudos as long as this is being recorded.
Okay. So we will momentarily go to the next.
All right. So the next PR, number 5, for those following along in their own browser, is details on the IHL use case, written by Felix. Would you like to come introduce it? Oh yeah, there is substantial change, please.
So actually, this is, I would not talk about this pull requests individually. I had sent an email to the working group and I opened an issue relating to that email. And this pull request is an example of what I think. I'm not saying that my text on IHL is perfect, but like I think this is a direction that we need to go towards on all use cases. So I rather see this as an example. Hey, I think we should give more life to the individual use cases. So yeah, let's maybe zoom out and discuss the issue first before we go into details of the wording of this PR.
Okay. How would you word the issue as I'm creating?
Oh, it's open. No, there is an issue.
There is an issue.
First one, topmost. Yeah, so I've said this a couple of times on the mailing list. I pursued 3 goals in my, when I contributed text towards this document, which is we need to have an actionable list of requirements that informs working group work. We need to be able to decide when working group work is finished and whether it is adequate. And we need to invite for stakeholder evaluation of the individual use cases to check whether they actually make sense. Also, I think it's important to relate the requirements to the individual use cases so that we can fix mistakes that we made and that we only detect later on. For example, I made a mistake when phrasing undetectable validation, which is why I opened a pull request for it. Yeah, and I only detected this mistake because I was talking to people about the use case and what it means and how it relates to the things we want to do. And then I was, oh shit, I wrote it wrong in the document. Yeah, so having this coupling between use cases and requirements is important to really understand where they're coming from. So my pull request on the details of IHL is a first sketch, is a first sketch towards making it explicit how the architecture that we're developing relates to the requirements to exactly allow us to accomplish these 3 goals later. Mostly to check whether work is finished and adequate, and to invite for stakeholder evaluation so that we actually know whether we're doing the right thing. That was my introduction to this larger issue. And yeah, as I said, the IHL pull request is an example, adding more details to one of the uses, but I think we need to do this for all.
Andrew.
Hi, Andrew Campling. I don't have any issues with any of that, but I would suggest it's useful to spend that energy on the use cases that we had previously agreed were the priority ones to focus on, and maybe not worry so much about the additional use cases which might follow along later.
Do you have specific examples to suggest on the use cases you have in mind?
So if I probably imperfectly recollect the discussion at the last IETF meeting, I think the gist of it directionally was that we would prioritize the sort of Red Cross, Red Crescent use case and anything which was identical to that, and other stuff to follow once that was nailed would be a very poor, I mean, see the minutes, I guess, but that was about, I think, the gist of it.
The queue is empty and the PR is not. This is a little interesting. Does no one else have any? Okay, we got some. Okay. Nothing in chat. Nothing on this topic. No one's in the queue. Is everyone's cool with this wall of text-ish? Pushing.
Come back to it later.
Yeah.
So to be clear, we're merging this in an example, or we're leaving this unmerged? for later.
With this lack of signal, I would definitely suggest leaving it unmerged for now. Felix, you might want to top post to the list and start this off, because it's interesting that this large a change doesn't have more. Allison, would you like to weigh in on this before we move on? Oh yeah, the GitHub issue.
I
And
hadn't actually read it in detail till a moment ago, just because too many things going on. And I'm actually happy to see the digital assets now included in the IHL cases. That's, I think, new, or it's more explicit than it had ever been before. So that's a plus for this. I'm not sure we're ready to merge it, but you know, I think that people should read it. It's probably a reasonable starting point for the use cases that you've described. That's my sense of things. I'd like to, you know, maybe we can pick some on the wording a little bit, but I think it was a good expansion.
excellent, thank you. All right, we will continue the discussion on GitHub and the mailing list. All right, so PR number 7 removes that pesky to-do line that we always start with in the security section. Allison, would you like to come to the mic line and introduce this? Okay.
So I've done my share of trying to make some kind of security requirements when people put a to-do in there. And this is a little bit of a placeholder, because it seems a little bit like, oh, we're going to really have security considerations. There's none really here. But there really are some here, is what I'm saying, and probably not worded well enough, and maybe one of you can think of a better wording, in the sense that multiple of the requirements have security properties, explicit security properties. And the use cases have threat models. And so our saying there's no secure, you know, we need to say something about security here, because it's actually a security heavy document. And where are the security mitigations and the details going to be? We need to say, expect to find them when you find the architecture, expect to find them when you find the standard, because it's actually super related to what's in this document. That's what I was trying to say there.
Okay, Rowan with chair hat on. So I think that before we go to a working group last call of this document, we're going to need a much more detailed security considerations section, even if it repeats, or, you know, I think that it is irrelevant whether the information in the security considerations section, if much of it is also in other parts of the document. The point of the security considerations section is so that people don't have to go and hunt through the document to see a summary of the issues. So I think maybe there is another issue related to having an outline. And so I think maybe a better thing would be to fill out an outline first, and then to start fleshing out individual subsections of the outline, you know, as they come up. That would be my proposal as a chair.
In the interim, clarifying it, is the chair guidance that we're issuing that we should opt not to do this PR to, from the beginning, do that kind of outline? Or do you also, because I think the text makes sense as a placeholder now, just it's not working group last call ready, of course. The to-do annoys me, and I think the text is a decent starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would rather have an outline in that it makes it clear what needs to be done, rather than
just a couple of examples, which is what I gave. If I do a new PR that has the outline, and I'd really love to not have the to-do sitting there. It just doesn't look good. And I wasn't sure we could put the full-on outline. I now see Rahel's comment. So, but I'm happy to try a whack at that, early next week and try to give you something that you could actually merge.
Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, then. We will assign and move on to the next PR. All right, last PR to review, unless someone wants to submit one in the next few minutes. Allison, would you like to come introduce this one also?
This is another one where I think we need to get some memory. I don't think it should be controversial, except it's an incomplete list, but this is the list that I could think of people we already acknowledged in past iterations and people who have spoken up in the background or in the foreground on the use cases. And I just feel like we should accumulate names rather than forgetting them. So I don't think this should be controversial to merge.
Agreed, and in fact, it's very good practice. So thank you for adding this. If anyone queues up to disagree with this, I'm gonna be surprised. Our responsible AD is coming to the microphone. Oh no.
Hi, Ori Steele. I don't disagree with this. I just want to remind you all, when you're going to acknowledge folks, make sure you have their consent before you include them in the document. So, folks, there's a ISG statement on it. It's like no surprise acknowledgements. Just make sure that folks feel comfortable being named in the document before you push it up to the data tracker. Thanks.
That is an excellent reminder. Thank you. That's interesting. Okay, so in terms of merging in GitHub, that is a thing we can do, but a note to the editors, do not submit to the data tracker until you know that you have everyone's understanding of the list, and then remove people as needed. But that's something you can handle on your own. We don't need to discuss who is here or not. I think we all have a shared understanding. We've all been here. Okay. Well then, were there any open issues that were not associated with a PR?
Oldest first.
All right, oldest first. Let's talk about bearer and assets. All right. Could we clarify if there's a difference in meaning between a bearer of a digital emblem versus an asset that bears a digital emblem? And then we see discussion going down. Is there significantly more? Let's just go ahead and open the queue on this one. Does anyone have an opinion on there being a difference between a bearer of a digital emblem and an asset that bears a digital emblem? Andrew.
Hi, Andrew Campling. As a start of a 10 is a bearer, a legal entity, and an asset, a physical thing, physical virtual thing.
Be careful with that PH word. Yes. Okay. Makes sense. And I see Felix in chat saying we should make them equal. So now we have two stances. Does anyone want to weigh in, support one or the other, issue a third?
I would say, since Bill brought this up, oh yeah, go ahead, Lars. But I would say, unless we get like a strong consensus, I think we may want to leave this one open. If this was opened by Bill, that Bill could have a chance to respond.
Lars Eggert, Mozilla. So I don't have a strong opinion, but if they're the same, we should use one term, because otherwise it's confusing.
Makes sense.
Stuart, go ahead.
Stuart just dropped out of the queue and disappeared.
Just
So
because I was walking up to the mic.
Stuart's here.
Yeah. So I don't have a strong opinion, but in my pocket, I have a passport, and my passport I think of as an asset, and it has emblems printed upon it. I think of myself as the bearer of the emblem. I think of the thing in my pocket as not the actual asset to be protected, but nonetheless, it's distinct from me. And so in common parlance, there is a difference between the word asset that might bear an emblem and bearer. So I don't think we should be too quick to dismiss the distinction. That's all.
Thank you, which I'm looking at Andrew to nod and assuming that sounded roughly in line with what you were suggesting. Very good. DKG.
I was going to say that it seems to me that all bearers maybe are assets, but not all assets are bearers, because there are assets that don't bear a token, an emblem. I mean, I could have an asset that is not in any way protected by a digital emblem, and it would still be an asset. So I don't know if that's the distinction we're talking about.
Allison?
So I'm interpreting this from a quick email that you also got. I think that I kind of like what DKG just said, that we could keep them distinct by saying that not all assets are bearers, although we're mostly interested in the bearers. But there was also the model of there's a digital emblem that may be referring to a number of assets that are sort of addressed collectively. There's that possibility that they're distinct, because there's like groups of assets, and then there's the bearer of the digital emblem is a grouping of them. And then there's also, and then the part that was in the background here was an asset as not a person. So our person versus non-person thing. So a bearer sounds more like a person, which is kind of how I heard the penultimate comment also, that I have an asset, I'm the bearer. So I think that we have a couple of ways this could be confusing, and maybe the right thing to do is just write something about the semantics and then say, but we're going to use bearer all the time. It's just that the semantics that you might be thinking about are these, and put them out of your mind and just use bearer. But we probably shouldn't just leave it nakedly, just the word bearer. I think an explanatory thing about the terminology would not be a bad thing if we're going to agree on bearer as the terminology.
I briefly searched my mind for an example in the use cases, and it occurred to me that maybe a wetland is an asset, but not likely to be a bearer.
DKG.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, Allison said we're primarily interested in bearers, that is in the assets that have emblems. But I think that one of the primary consumers of this group of the work this group produces are going to be attackers. And they are primarily interested in the assets of non-bearers, because they want to know who is an acceptable target. So I actually don't think this group is interested specifically in, or even primarily in the bearers. We want to be able to mark the bearers so that they're excluded from targeting. But I think if we're really thinking about who's the user of this, we want to make sure that we're thinking about the ones that don't bear as well.
To maybe, hi, Andrew Campling, to challenge the point about the wetland. Having thought about it, I think the wetland is the bearer, or at least the entity that owns or operates the wetland, is a bearer. So as distinct from, it's not a digital thing, so surely the asset is the wetlands website, for example.
I'm sorry, I didn't parse that at all.
Okay. The digital emblem is to protect digital assets, not.
No, the initial scope of our charter is that the first thing that we do is digital emblems. We did not say that there is no such thing as an emblem that applies to a physical object, just that we're not going to work on it until after we have delivered something that applies to digital assets.
And to clarify the importance of that, it's because the first two deliverables of this working group are intentionally extended for what we expect the working group to be able to work on, i.e., we may not fulfill all the requirements in this document with the first protocol we produce, and that's okay. Felix.
Yeah, and just a small, Felix, just a small footnote on what you said. The way you described bearer sounded a lot to me like emblem issuer, which is terminology we also have in the document, so there might be some overlap. Yeah, just a footnote.
Actually, even in the context out of wetlands, I really liked what DKG said, that that looking at things which are related to assets that are bearers, but maybe more suitable for attack, is actually pretty relevant. So I think we probably should keep the word separate and have a description of them as separate because of that. I'm changing my position on this. But my position previously was we should at least clarify that there's a lot of semantics behind the decision to have one. And I actually really like the idea of having two now that we're remembering about the attackers and that side of things, which is actually, as DKG has said many times before, not sufficiently represented among us.
All right, so the queue being currently empty, we don't have a strong signal here, but I'm going to try and push the room to make sure that we have good guidance and feedback for the editors. I believe most of the commenters were leaning toward the identities being distinct. We just disagree on the nature of their distinction. So editors, do you have any questions you'd like to pose to the room, or would you like to take an attempt at this? You don't need a cue, or you can just unmute or nod. For the record, that was a
Non-committal sigh.
yes, non-committal sigh. That this would be the. Can we use emoji in the notes? I'm deliberately stalling so that we have time to discuss. Go on.
So Felix, you may speaking as an individual, not as an editor of the draft. Oh, this is the first time I'm saying this. Personally, to me, I said this before with digital emblems. I think we shouldn't spend too much time discussing the terminology because I think that many of these points won't help us write better specifications. I agree that bearer and asset right now are a bit conflated and that we need to have them a bit sharper, distinguished, or maybe use one, maybe use the other. I think many good points were raised. I don't have an opinion on what of them is the best. I think we can sit together, think about what is a way to make this document clearer so that no one scratches their head. And if everyone stops scratching their head, then I'm happy. Yeah. Let's see where that brings us. I would love for people to raise the issue, for example, to maybe also make suggestions how they would see the issue be resolved, because evidently they were confused about something. Maybe they have an idea of how this could be better. So happy for more concrete input here too. Thank you.
It is a fact that the express love language of the IETF is suggested text. Stuart.
Yeah, sorry to speak twice to the same issue, but this may shed a little light since we're in a domain where law is a big factor. According to Black's Law Dictionary, a bearer is a person who physically holds a document that indicates that that person is entitled to something represented by that document.
Which I'm deriving from that an argument that a person is a bearer, and in that instance, the document is the asset. Thank you for going to a source on terminology. Rahel.
Okay, so I guess I'm speaking kind of, I can't say whether I'm speaking as an individual or as an editor here. I think more as an individual, though. I know that at some point I had mentioned that this felt a lot like the term subject. So where the subject is actually like what is being covered, which might just be a synonym for asset here. But I do think that the distinction is important because it's part of the nuance of upon where is the authorization being placed or issued. So I think that that is definitely an important detail that we need to keep in here.
Thank you. DKG.
Hi, Tommy, I wanted to maybe push back on your characterization of Stewart's example. So in Stewart's example from Black's Law Dictionary, the bearer is a person who physically holds a document that identifies that the bearer is entitled to something. It sounds to me like the bearer is, you said that the bearer is the person and the document is the asset. But it sounds to me like the document is the emblem, right? Because we're saying this entity is entitled to this thing. So what I'm hearing is that there's like multiple levels of distinction here, right? There's a distinction between the entities who have the legal entitlement. There's the object, for lack of a better word, which holds the emblem. And then there is the emblem itself. And you can have people who aren't entitled. You can have people who, we can have objects that belong to the people that hold the emblem or don't. So if we wanted to separate out who the legal rules apply to as different from the digital asset, I think that's fine. I'm not sure that I would use the term bearer to describe that, because the entity who's getting some sort of privilege out of this is not the same thing as the digital infrastructure that's being protected in our digital emblem case. Sorry, I feel like I've shed less negative amounts of light on the subject now.
No, thank you. What I was doing was guessing at an interpretation, and I did my job by pushing a response to the discussion.
So DKG, if I could just query you on this here. So I was trying not to take Stewart's comment literally, but just use it as an indication that a bearer has been, considered a separate entity from the thing that it's from whatever the target is of the whatever the emblem is that it's holding. And in this case, it's restricted to a person, which we obviously don't want to do in this working group. But would you say that a bearer is considered distinct from the thing getting the special treatment, the emblem getting the special treatment, or the target of the emblem?
I think if you're asking me for a direct response here, I do understand that there is a distinction between the legal entity who's entitled to get special protection and the things that receive the special protection in the case of targeting. But I wouldn't say that the legal entity that is entitled to this thing is the bearer in that case, because they are not bearing any emblem. We're talking about who's holding the emblem, right? So if we want to talk about the authorized party, right? We have authorizing parties. Maybe there's the authorized party, and then they have assets, and some of those assets are bearers and some of them are not. That's one way of carving up the different distinctions that I've heard in this conversation.
Thank you. Jim.
Thanks very much, Jim Reid, speaking with my co-chair or co-editor hat on for this particular document. Sorry, not co-chair. It's been a long week. Please send text. I think that's what we need here. I'm a little bit concerned we're rat holing here in lots of detail, and we're not lawyers. At least we're mostly engineers, I think, here. And if we start looking for legal definitions, it's probably a bad idea for engineers to start playing around with legal definitions, just as it would be a bad idea to have lawyers writing protocol specs. So I think if we can get some definitions from people or some thoughts about what they think the definitions are or what the terminology means for emblems, assets, holders, and all the rest of it, we can maybe try and find a common way through all of that. And I think the best way to do that is by sending text. By all means, carry on this discussion right here, but I think it's not going to terminate. I think we need to get some more information from people and give us their ideas about what they think these things are and find out some way through that to either merge these things together or reach a common understanding about it.
So chair hat firmly on, strongly in support of suggested text, because I would say that's a fair assessment of this discussion. There's clearly some ambiguity that needs to be worked through. Now, on the note of not having lawyers here, Samit.
So yeah, Samit, ICRC, and I am a lawyer. And to be honest, I also think there's some ambiguity here because we're trying to take legal terms and sort of smush them into like more technical documents. Oh, you can't hear me. And I think that's difficult. Like we need to think about what the implications are. And even honestly, as a lawyer, speaking my lawyer hat on, I'm not really sure how these things fit. So if I can just give one example of how the emblem works, because now we've kind of thrown out different terms. We talked about bearer and asset, but we've also talked about authorizing parties. So, let's say a hospital wants to use an emblem. In my mind, I would consider the hospital to be the bearer. The assets could be objects, right? Could be an ambulance, could be, I don't know, the hospital itself. So the structures on the roof should have the emblem, but it could also be the staff, right? So like when I worked on the field on the ICRC, I mean, I was an asset that bore an emblem, but I would still say that the bearer in that emblem was, rather the institution that I worked for. The ICRC is a bit special because we're an authorizing party because we, like the ICRC has the right under international humanitarian law to use the emblem at all times. But normally, like the hospital wouldn't be an authorizing party in my mind because the authorizing party for civilian hospitals is either, a party to a conflict or a state. Right, so they authorize a hospital to use the emblem, but they're not going to tell the hospital you have to use it on these specific ambulances and these specific persons. It's the hospital then that would use that would then determine, okay, well, we're authorized to use the emblem, so we're going to use it on these things to make sure those things are protected. And I guess to go back to that other analogy, and again, we're smushing things a little bit, but with the passport, I mean, you can see the passport as kind of playing a similar role to an emblem in the sense that it indicates some sort of legal action that has to be taken by some persons, right? So if you are a person and you present the passport at a border control, well, now, the first page of the passport usually says like, please allow free travel to this person or whatever it is. And so in that sense, it's a bit like an emblem that it kind of gives you this, this sort of authority to travel. Then you as the individual, I guess you would be the asset in that case, but the authorizing party in this case would be the state that's given you that passport. So I think we need to think about how all of these things fit together. And I do think there's nuances, there are differences in these terms. And at some point, those nuances will become really important because, as more sort of stakeholders get involved in these conversations, they'll come out and say, hey, I'm an authorizing party, but I'm not a bearer. Or, hey, I'm a bearer and I have assets, but I'm not an authorizing party. So those distinctions will be important. So I'll also try to help and work with everyone to to try and propose some text. Someone teaches me how.
So for the room and the record, it sounds like Jim suggested engineers should not write legal guidance and a lawyer just volunteered to do it for us. So we look forward to your PR, Samit. But in all seriousness, that might be helpful in this context because, oh, sorry, Andrew, I thought we had drained the queue. My bad.
Not disagree. Sorry, Andrew Campling, that sounds like a fine idea. Because it's still very abstract sort of conceptually, just as a thought, do we want to make sure that each of the use cases is clear on the terms as they apply to that use case? Because even this discussion suggests it might vary a bit.
I have a suggestion. I propose that Samit and Allison work together as a long-term technical person and a lawyer to come up with a consistent definition, set of definitions or guidelines. How's that sound? Jim, you want to be in the party?
No. I'm just pointing out, Natasha has just said in the chat that she's happy to help. So I think that's another potential contributor of some text.
Okay.
I've just volunteered her for that.
Excellent. Thanks. I'm going to assign the issue just now.
Thank you both, and thank you, Natasha, for chiming in on the chat. Looking forward to seeing the results. With that, we have locked the queue because we've reached, we are now circling. Time to write some text. All right, and there might be one other issue that's not associated with the PR, which we'll get to momentarily.
Okay. Oh, we have two more.
Okay.
I think we have a PR.
Yes, we do have a PR for the acknowledgements. All right.
Is a native English speaker.
Everyone types fluently until they're doing so on a presented screen. That's just a fact. Mine, thank you. Mostly because I'm doing memes in chat. All right, so last one. I'm getting some deja vu. I feel like we did this one. We did discuss this. All right.
Okay.
We have officially... Oh. We're creating a new issue. Looking at you, responsible AD, do we want to respect the 5 authors suggested limit? I know that there are exceptions, but it is a generally respected rule. How do you feel about this document? Convention, that's a good word. Lawyers, you let me know if there's a better one. What? Custom, there you go.
Hi, Ori Steele, I'm your AD. This comes up, and the ISG doesn't really like going, over the limit. I think, from a practical standpoint, there is a contributor section, and I think most of the time when you see this many authors in a document, you see a missed opportunity for a clear distinction between document editors who integrate feedback from not just, primary authors, but working participants, and contributors who contribute substantial text to the document. So my recommendation, and if you talk to other ADs, I'm sure you'll get different advice, but I'm your AD. My recommendation to you is think about whose primary responsibility is integrating feedback, but not really having an opinion, and who's having a very strong opinion that needs to be sort of weighed against the other positions in the group, and make use of the contributor section and identify, the contributions according to how they come, and then also make use of the acknowledgement section, which, Allison already got us started with. So I think respect the limit, in short.
Thank you. All right, then, editors. When you do the next revision and submit to the data tracker, please limit the co-authors to 5. I think it's fair to say the chairs do not need to adjudicate that. I think you can decide amongst yourselves and be sure to give the dropped co-authors sufficient credit in the consideration section, in the contributor section. Thank you.
I'm happy to show you where that is. That's kind of a hidden feature of cram down RFC, but I'm happy, or cram down, markdown. Yeah, cram down. I'm happy to show you where that thing is.
The theme of this meeting is words are hard. So you know what to do. All right. Are there any other surprise issues? I'm going to unlock the queue. Felix, come on up.
Yeah, maybe now is a good time to discuss timeline and how we go towards a working group last call on this document.
I'm going to pause you. We will talk about that. Let me pause you, though, and do a check on the room to see if there's anything else like these issues that you'd like to talk about on document content before we move on to that topic. And maybe not, but if so, we'll start with that. Awkward pause, latency for people dialed in. All right. Why don't you come on back to the mic? Oh, wait, sorry. I need to pay more attention to the queue. Rahel.
No problem. So I know that one of the things that I had in mind was a bit more discussion about actually fleshing out use cases and figuring out procedures for actually ensuring that we have input to the best of our abilities. I know that some of this might be a discussion that needs to be taken offline, but I just wanted to make sure that I put that out there.
Thank you for bringing that up. At this stage, then, I keep doing this. Andrew.
Hi, Andrew Campling. I just wanted to check with the co-chairs. Did you agree with what I said earlier when I snuck it in a different section that we were going to prioritize a small subset of the lengthy list of use cases in the current draft to move forward with those first and not try to do the whole lot simultaneously?
Well, that sounds like a question to the room that the chairs will sit back and guide carefully as you all discuss.
But no, there was never any suggestion of that before. You've just raised the question. Unless you get consensus, then we probably will not, but maybe you will get consensus.
Allison.
So I thought I'd bring this up because we've got a good collection of people to adjudicate or think about it. There's a requirement that's come up a couple times and it's not in here, which is that there may be a need for forensic collection of digital emblems, since they come and go and they have timestamps. They don't in DNS, they're not naturally going to have a timestamp. And if we could put that in here as something to keep in mind, it's a may, but we've heard this from a number of parties. Sometimes we've heard against it from a number of parties, but it's actually something IETF has some knowledge about. And I'd like to know if you'd like to ask the room about that one.
And if the room would like to respond, yes, let's call that an assertion to the room, but will you please also add that as a GitHub issue so we don't lose track of it? Thank you.
So yeah, Jim was so kind allowing me to skip the queue because I have a response to that. Actually, we intended to address this. There is a discussion in section 4.5 on proof of presence, which intended to capture that. Yeah, maybe we can edit it, but my intent, our intention was to address this reasoning in section 4.5.
Okay, thank you. Good.
And Allison, Rohan has you covered. Jim.
Thanks, Tommy. I just want to answer the question that Andrew posed a few minutes ago. When we started work in this working group, we agreed we were going to prioritize and focus on the humanitarian use cases. So if there are use cases and requirements in the requirements document which don't address that,
A little closer.
a little closer to the microphone. Okay. Let me start at the beginning again. Andrew said that he was concerned about the shopping list of requirements and use cases in the document just now. When we started work in this working group, we agreed early on that we were going to focus on the humanitarian use cases and requirements. So if we're not going to take these things out just now or start talking about taking out that list, we should be looking to see which of those existing requirements and use cases in the document don't fit with that humanitarian remit.
When did we decide that?
Very early on.
I don't believe that we did.
I thought we did. Maybe I was in a different meeting from the one you were in.
I'm going to cut in for a moment, Andrew. I mean, stay there. It's fine. I just want to cut in and say that at the previous meeting, what did gain consensus at the end of the meeting was for the editors to consider starting with, do include the use cases that are defined fully with, whose requirements are fully within the charter's definition, and then free to include additional use cases where some of their requirements are within charter. And the chairs are loath to say anything beyond that as to what the working group has defined. So the working group is welcome to raise as discussion points what should or should not be in there. But that's all that the chairs can say the working group with consensus has declared.
Okay, I accept the clarification. Thanks for that, Tommy. Although I still want to go back and repeat what I said earlier a little bit. Early on in the process, this might have been at one of the initial BOFs. There was a discussion about using the digital emblems for things like pallets and containers and all sorts of other things like that, shipping containers and stuff like that. And we felt that was too broad a scope and too difficult to tackle in the first instance. And I'm fairly sure we made a decision of sorts. It might not be a consensus decision, but we felt that that particular thing would have to wait until we got the humanitarian stuff out of the way first.
So specifically, we have the charter, which says that we're going to work on digital assets, and we're going to I'm sorry, I'm having a brain freeze.
It's Friday afternoon. We're all in that state.
Yeah. And that we're going to use DNS as our initial mechanism. So I think that is a forcing function which constrains the application of some of the requirements. And I don't believe that we made any, the working group made any other formal statement, or the ISG or the IAB said anything other than that. But that does provide a scope, an initial scope.
Okay.
And
let's discuss this over beer. There's a farewell reception starting soon.
Hi, Andrew Campling. For what it's worth, my recollection pretty much 100% matches Jim's, and by the look of it from the comments, DKG's as well. I thought it was reasonably clear, even from Madrid, that we weren't going to proceed with with a shopping list of use cases all at the same time, because I think that's just a recipe for failure. I think we absolutely should So if it wasn't clear it was consensus, maybe pose a question now that we should focus in the first instance on the humanitarian use cases, do other stuff later once that's done.
If the working group would like to, the working group can do whatever it wants now. This is its document. Speaking historically, since we're talking about the BOFs, as someone who was an active proponent before I was a chair, I was carefully involved in the scope that's being described here. And I can say with certainty that we did not gain consensus on that, despite my arguments and others in favor of it, because that's partly why the BOFs failed, is that we didn't get that consensus. It was a very large portion of the room that felt that way. That is true. But as chair, I feel the need to strongly remind the room that didn't happen, because otherwise the second BOF would have created a working group. Felix.
And before we go on, I'm going to say that we had a consensus call at the previous working group meeting that effectively ruled out what you just said. So,
and as a reminder,
check the notes.
And as a reminder, that was include everything include use cases where all requirements are in the charter scope, and then you may add, oh yes, let me just read it to you. The working group shall concentrate discussion on requirements covered by the initial scope, but will not prevent inclusion of out-of-scope requirements which are non-controversial. Large majority, yes. So that was the guidance given to the editors last time. So if the room would like to declare something to be controversial and not in the document, please do so, but there is no appeal to previous authority on which to do that. Thank you. Felix.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring up the issue that I opened before because I think it's related, and maybe this is something we can get consensus on. It's orthogonal but related. I think this document will eventually make it through IESG review, right? And
not necessarily. It's not required to leave this document is not required to go to the ISG.
Working group last call, yes.
But okay, but didn't we say something like it must be ISG review ready, or?
Yes. But that doesn't mean it has to go through the ISG.
Hi, I'm your area director. I'm just going to jump queue to say basically the same thing. Use cases document is here to sort of help us understand the problem, and its useful. Its use is to basically cover enough of that space so that you can apply it to your first proposed standard technical deliverable, which is around applying this to the DNS. So I think you working group can spend as much time in your use cases space as you want to, but you're not required to send your use cases all the way up. You're just required to get to the point where you feel like you have consensus around the base use cases to inform the initial proposed standard technical document. And just, speaking as an individual in the IETF community, I will warn you, do not spend a ton of time in your use cases document. You want to get to your proposed standard. You're going to have a whole different set of fights at that layer, and it's going to be awesome. And when you finish that document, you're going to have something people can actually use. Your use cases are not something that people can use, and you could spend a lot of time arguing them forever. So that last part is as an individual. I'll leave it to you with my hat back on now. It's for the chairs to decide how much of that agenda time they want to give to the use cases, and for the working group to work together on exactly what they just said.
Chairs hat firmly on. Yeah, we don't want to spend forever on this, and we would like to, because before protocols, we also have an architecture document. Felix.
Yeah, but let me recollect what I wanted to say. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification. Oh, no, it was good. Nevertheless, we received feedback during our last meeting that it is important to evaluate the requirements with the respective stakeholders. And for me personally, it's important in a working group, during the working group last call, to look at the use cases that are included and be able to say the things that we are intending to address have been evaluated, and that we have received evaluation whether the requirements are adequate. And maybe this is something we can find consensus on, that this is important for us to consider, the evaluation of the requirements, because I think this gives us a fairer way to evaluate which use cases we're going to prioritize and which ones not.
Thank you. Do we have, oh yeah, I wanted to ask you, Felix, did you say section 4.5 was the section about forensic?
Yeah, I think it was that one. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so there was a lot of discussion about what the decided scope was, and on its clarification, there's no further commentary on what it ought to be, which I found a little surprising. Just prodding the room that if there's to be further discussion on how you'd like to see the document changed, now is the time. But also feel free to raise it on the list or on GitHub, because this is a working group document now, and there's no need to sit around and work on this for many IETFs. So if the feedback starts to get quiet, working group last call will be upon us. So no need to hesitate if you see things that you want to see added or see things that you want to be excluded, which I heard a bunch about, and then no specific use cases were raised. So with that push to the room, I see the tradition of doing the queue one at a time continues. Rahel.
Okay, thanks for bearing with me. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to push back against, I had mentioned this in the chat, was that folks were saying, oh, we want to prioritize the humanitarian use cases. I think especially since many of the use cases that we are including are dictating things like transport of chemicals or marking airplanes as being specifically civil, are things that could in themselves be considered humanitarian use cases as well, but do not fall specifically under the ICRC umbrella. And so I want to caution people in one, being specific in what they mean if they're saying we're prioritizing the humanitarian use cases, and two, to also make sure that they're giving enough thought to why those use cases were added to begin with.
I thought I had
Tommy.
Tommy Jensen, Cloudflare, speaking as an individual. I think we can cut to the heart of that by simply saying that as we discuss what should and should not, that people should mention specific use cases by name instead of trying to use categories. That ought to simplify things for everyone.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to make two clarifications. One, yes, I just want to make two clarifications. One, I think when some people talk about humanitarian use cases, you're talking about the international humanitarian law use cases. And just to be clear, though, none of that falls under the umbrella, so to speak, of the ICRC, right? I mean, these are the treaties that are negotiated by states. Like every state in the world is party to the Geneva Convention, so it's not like under the umbrella of the ICRC. We're talking about humanitarian law use cases. But yeah, I agree with what you just said, Tommy. I mean, I think we can be clearer about exactly what we're talking about when we talk about use cases.
Stuart.
As per the suggestion made at the mic about a minute ago, the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO use case that is listed in the draft, and I don't know who put it there, but thank you. There is precedent. Back in World War II, the identification friend or foe system was developed, and it is very much along the lines of what we are talking about now. Derived from that is something that many of you may be familiar with today, the Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast Mode, ADSB, where aircraft beacon their position and various other information. ICAO is in the throes of trying to standardize globally a lot more use of information technology to support safe and effective civil aviation operations. And those digital assets would be very much the sorts of things that we might wish to indicate as deserving of protections using a digital emblem. So that is a specific use case. I don't know what category it might fall in.
Stuart, do you have contact with a stakeholder who would be able to send text, send requirements, designate a person that can answer questions, et cetera?
So I will give you both yes and no answers. The global headquarters of ICAO is about 2 blocks away here in Montreal. I was there at a meeting earlier this week after ducking out of my IETF sessions. I definitely have contacts there, but it is an international treaty organization with 193 member nations, and an official statement from them requires agreement from all 193, which I ain't going to get anytime soon. But I can certainly try to get less than fully official statements of interest from staffers there.
Thank you.
And yes, even that is very helpful. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, if we don't have any other, oh, sorry, we have a queue. Go ahead. I glance and it's there's nothing. And then
they sneak up on you.
Sorry to keep appearing. So I wanted to mention, I don't know if any of the folks who've been here in the past from Article 19 about press safety are here, but they have been here before. And we had a roundtable of people that we didn't finish editing, Chatham rules kind of thing. And there were different parts of that case which people were quite interested in, and it's not like a single federation or a single organization. So I want to keep that in. And the Marshlands is also an international global organization, but they have designated a science and technology committee that can kind of explore things like standards or other things that are relevant. And we initiated contact with them as opposed to the whole organization. And that might be something that you probably know, but Stuart, but ICAO may possibly have that where it's not binding on the organization, but it makes something available that may then be interesting to the organization.
Thank you. Samit.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to bounce off the mention of ICAO to share a fun fact. So in the 1970s, the ICRC and others worked with ICAO actually to, I don't know what.
Closer to the mic, please.
Oh, okay. We worked with ICAO to develop certain standards for certain light signals for medical aircraft. And that was, so we worked with them, they developed those standards, and then those standards were actually directly incorporated into international humanitarian law, a bit a similar way that we want to do also with the digital emblem, right? So medical aircraft now have a specific light signal that they can use that's in Annex 1 of Additional Protocol 1. It's called a distinctive signal. And similarly, indeed, the digital infrastructure of medical aircraft, or any digital infrastructure that's used by medical aircraft, would indeed also be, we would see that as also protected under international humanitarian law. So, yeah.
Thank you. DKG.
Now for something completely different. I would like just to note to the chairs that I believe you have a way of the documents that have been marked for this group don't have proper lineage. I believe this document, the adopted draft, derives from one that is has a different draft name, but it's not marked that way in the data tracker. And in fact, the agenda for this meeting pointed to the draft Feinstein DIEM use cases, even though we've been talking about draft IETF DIEM requirements. So I want to encourage you as chairs to fiddle whatever bits you need to fiddle in the data tracker to keep the lineage correct there.
Thanks, DKG. Yeah, just to comment on it, I believe the replaces information got dropped by accident when the draft IETF was submitted, and but fortunately and I can go take care of that right after this meeting, and the GitHub repo was transferred, so the history of that, and it should redirect appropriately, and if it doesn't, please let me know.
Thank you for calling that out, though. I see that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Hi, Corey Myers-Fried from the Press Foundation. In partial response to your question, Allison, we've talked about this a bit internally, and I think we are not opposed to the press use case being listed here. we don't see a concrete use case for it that we are pursuing or advocating for.
Okay, thank you for the info. But also thank you for being here. Okay, so prodding the room, the mic or the queue is currently empty, and I'm staring at my monitor constantly, so you don't sneak up on me. We will go to any other business if we're completely drained, but just, last chance. We still have 25 minutes. If there's anything else that the group wants to discuss, and more specifically, if there's guidance you can give the editors to do their next revision on what should and should not be included, speak now or forever go back to the list until next time.
Until 10 minutes from now. And unless there's some strong objection, I'm going to merge the two security considerations related issues into a single one. Going.
Do it. Okay. You do. We would do any other business. Yeah. All right. So we are now in the any other business section. So beyond the draft, if there are things that you believe that this group will find useful to our work, now's the time. The queue is open.
I will take this opportunity to say that Sumit, maybe you're going to mention the NATO related thing.
Okay, well, now you took the wind out of my, I feel like you took the wind out of my sail there. So even closer, gosh, there's no wind left in my lungs apparently. So yeah, I just want to, one of the things that hasn't come up in this meeting, but came up a lot in the last meeting was verifiers, right? We talked a lot about verifier participation. We talked about the challenges in having verifiers in the room. And that was something that we really took to heart. And one of the fruits of sort of us working with verifiers, because obviously that's a key part of the ICRC's mandate, right? Working with states and parties to conflict on issues related to international humanitarian law. We were able to have a digital Red Cross, Red Crescent, Red Crystal prototype ADEM tested in an operational environment by the NATO Center for Cyber Excellence. The acronym's not right, but anyways. There's a post on it, so I'm happy to share the post in the chat. So the training for the exercise on the prototype was done last week, and this week was the actual exercise itself. So we expect to get some feedback. We've already heard some things through the grapevine, but I think that will be really helpful for us as well. To sort of inform how verifiers see the digital emblem, the benefits, the challenges, etc. So I wanted to share that with the group as a big piece of good news. Maybe two smaller things since I'm already here. The International Committee of Military Medicine's Secretary General, so the ICMM is an organization, I think they have something like 166 states parties, so it's an intergovernmental organization for military medicine. So obviously a really important, I guess, bearer, but we'll work on the terminology. But a really important interlocutor certainly for us, shared a letter to the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, basically saying that the ICMM sees huge value in this work, has been following the technical discussions as well, and very much wants to continue supporting the work and sharing with their member states and essentially all of the medical services of the armed forces that are among those 166 member states. The importance of participating in this discussion, the importance of the digital emblem for military medical assets, digital assets, etc. So that letter also will be published soon. So I'll share that once that's ready to, once that's online. And then the third thing is that the World Medical Congress is taking place next week. So the World Medical Congress is for civilian medical services, so not military, but also a very important, stakeholder in this discussion. So they're actually having a Congress next week, and they invited the Vice President of the ICRC to speak on the digital emblem. So we'll have feedback also from civilian hospitals, which I'll share on the list as soon as I have that. Thanks.
Wow, that was a lot. Thank you for sharing. I assume that these will be venues who will be excited to see this group's productions also. Head nod for the note taker. Awesome. This is exciting to see. The queue is now empty, and we have 20 minutes left in the meeting. I would like to remind people this is DIEM. You're not in some other working group meeting. And as Pete said in the chat, this is very productive. And jokes aside, we're really appreciative of how the group has done this. And we really do think that we'd like to see a revision of this draft be challenged to working group last call, even if it doesn't pass it, because we're clearly in a better and productive place. So, editors, we believe in you. Prodding the room one more time on the queue. We will allow it this one time.
The connection. There we are.
His last IETF is AD and already slipping.
No, next one's my last one.
Oh, my bad.
So, first of all, I want to thank the chairs for a successful session. Samit, thank you so much for the update. I think it's excellent to hear about testing of sort of prototypes and other work that's happening adjacent to our use cases work right now. And I want to remind the group that the mailing list is a great place for you to discuss that prototype work, technical details around it. So while the chairs control the adoption of the agenda and also the time discussing items on the mailing list, if you're more interested in the sort of technical aspects, how does this work? How do I make a prototype? What are other people doing? You can have those discussions on the mailing list, even though the chairs are sort of currently progressing this document. So I want to encourage folks to work on the part of this problem that you're passionate about, that you like, and get involved. And thanks again for a successful meeting in IETF 124. Thank you, chairs.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Ori. Everyone, there will be food relatively soon at the closing for those on site, and we will see you next time.
Cheers.
Oh, you know what? I forgot. As long as the recording is still running, DKG, thank you for taking notes.
We disconnected.
Unfortunately, the room did, because I did too.
Use case scope thing, but
No, that's why we're here. The only reason we stepped in is because of the contentious history of this group. We want to be crystal clear. Yes.
Super correct.
yes.
If the room wants to do that, the room can do that. Just now it's a working group fresh.
Yes.
Yes, sir. But I mean, also like that other thing that I quoted, that was last time. That was
Right.
4 months ago.
Which is
as a
what
working group.
takes.
So
Like a court, the most recent decisions take precedence.
Yes.
yeah.